I was 13 years old when, during my 8th grade in a boarding school, I realized that my world had become blurry, both literally and metaphorically. My vision started to blur, and when I finally saw a specialist, he could not diagnose the problem. But he knew that it was something serious and referred me to one of the most advanced eye hospitals in the country. While my parents were worried about me going blind, I was sitting there and thinking, but what about my exams? I can't miss those. Because, good grades were all that mattered at 13, right? It wasn't until I was diagnosed with retinal tuberculosis that I realized it was something much bigger than I could even comprehend. Even after years of treatment and recovery, the scars on my retina are still a reminder of that time. Looking back now as a researcher in health and well-being, I realize something even more important. I realize that the illness did not start in my eyes. I realize that the illness started in my environment. I hated my boarding school. That feeling of being caged within the four walls, under strict discipline and lack of love and belonging, made me feel emotionally drained and isolated. But I could not express it, which meant that I suppressed it all. I stopped talking, and ironically, I was often rewarded for being so quiet and compliant. The longer I stayed in that environment, the more my immune system weakened, and it eventually manifested as a serious physical illness. My health condition is a powerful reminder of how interconnected our health is, mentally, physically, and emotionally. My health crisis was not just a result of physical issues, but it was deeply rooted in my emotional environment. Fortunately, I managed to survive, but I can still see the world through my eyes because my parents worked tirelessly to get me healthy again. But here's the troubling part. Even today, most of us do not think about health until we see an illness coming. How often do we see children in school conforming to rules, appearing to fit in, but clearly not thriving? We do not always notice when a child is quietly struggling. Today, we know that academic achievement is not the ultimate measure of a child's abilities or their future potential, but we are still not sure what is it that truly matters. I believe I have the answer to this question, and within this answer lies the secret to transforming education and, quite frankly, future itself. I call it thriving health. Thriving health is not just another fancy term to throw around. Think of thriving health as this all-encompassing umbrella under which everything that we want for our children, like happiness, success, resilience, confidence, all of these can thrive. But here's a powerful truth. Thriving health goes beyond being the absence of illness. Thriving health is creating a state where physical, social, emotional, and spiritual aspects of well-being work together in harmony. Now take a moment and think about this. For years, we have focused entirely on cognitive development and academic success. But in the process, schools have completely ignored the social, emotional, and spiritual aspects of our children's health. And what has it given us? Stress, disconnection, burnout. Do you agree to that? Well, I think thriving health is the antidote to this imbalance. It is one concept that can shift how we approach education and how we build schools. It is not just a health goal, but a foundation upon which we build the entire education system. And when we create environments that support thriving health, we are giving our children tools to protect themselves, not just from illnesses, but also from the stresses and challenges of modern life. But here is the real challenge. We cannot build thriving health umbrella for our children. Children have to build their umbrella themselves. Each child's umbrella is shaped by their unique experiences, temperaments, and interests. Our role as school architects and educators is to shape environments that create these experiences. Environments, both social and physical, play a crucial role in how strong and resilient our children's health umbrella becomes. Because children pick the building blocks to construct their thriving health umbrella from the environments that we create for them. For instance, when we create environments that fulfill children's basic psychological needs, we give them strong building blocks to construct their thriving health umbrella. This nicely ties into a theory that changed my entire life and also the way I look at children. I want you to go home and read about this theory and then reflect on your own life journey through the lens of this theory. This theory is called the self-determination theory. Self-determination theory says that the three basic psychological needs must be met for children and for all human beings in order for them to thrive. And these three needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Now let's understand what these three needs mean in the context of school children. Autonomy is psychological freedom. Autonomy is the feeling of I am in control. When children make choices in their learning, they thrive because they feel they're steering their own ship. Relatedness, on the other hand, is the feeling of I belong. Children need to feel valued, supported, and a part of a community, whether it's with their peers, teachers, or caregivers. And relatedness is not just connecting with other people. Children's need for relatedness drives them to connect with nature as well. When we create environments that allow children to connect with nature on a daily basis, we may never have to lecture them about environmental stewardship in closed classrooms. So the third need basic psychological need is the need for competence. Competence is the feeling of I can. It is the drive to master something that really matters to them. When children pursue what they really care about, that is when they build real confidence. At my boarding school, if you go back to my story, you will realize that none of these needs was actually met. Everything was pre-decided for me. That means I had no autonomy. Silence was enforced. That means there were little opportunities to connect with other people, therefore no relatedness. And that constant pressure of academics made me doubt my abilities and hence eroded my competence. So now you say, how do we create environments that meet these needs and foster thriving health of our children? Today in this talk, I'm going to talk only about one of these basic psychological needs, and that is the need for autonomy. Autonomy is giving students freedom to decide what, how, when, and where they learn. It is about creating flexible environments that allow children to make choices within clear boundaries. When children get a voice, they feel empowered to take charge of their own development. But let me tell you, autonomy is not about individualism or selfishness. It is about fostering responsibility, self-awareness, self-regulation, while still being connected to others. Autonomy thrives when children can exercise some control over both their space and time while they learn. To foster autonomy from a young age, we must consider strategies that empower children through their environment. For example, child-scaled environments where furniture and fixtures are designed to suit their physical needs allow children to engage with their surroundings independently. Or just think about clear intuitive navigation by ensuring that spaces are easy to understand. With clear signages and intuitive pathways, we can help children move confidently around the space, exercising autonomy in an age-appropriate way. And let's not forget about interconnected, diverse learning spaces where children can find quiet corners for reflection, collaborative areas for group work, outdoor learning spaces, and hands-on learning zones. and we allow children to move freely and explore these environments and choose where and how they want to learn. And if you worry that they move too much, let me tell you, movement matters. Research says that sitting is the new smoking, that we need 250 steps per hour in order to be healthy and in order to ward off chronic illnesses in future. And it is not just about physical health. Movement also enhances learning ability by improving focus, memory, and cognitive function. Now let's talk about something which may sound utopian but is actually the only way to give true autonomy to children. It is called self-directed learning. Self-directed learning is when children can take complete charge of their learning journey, including not just where and how they learn, but also what they learn. It might seem like a distant dream for conventional learning environments, but more and more innovative schools around the world are now discovering the incredible potential of self-directed learning. 2 years ago, I visited one of our schools in San Antonio called the Anne Frank Inspire Academy. The visit reaffirmed my belief that self-direction is truly the right direction. It might seem counterintuitive at first, but most people, they think that self-directed learning do not require teacher involvement as much. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Self-directed learning needs even more intense adult involvement. It's about guiding children to make choices that are meaningful to them, helping them discover what works best for their individual learning journeys. Because let's face it, even if we create best possible environmental conditions to learn, we must remember each child perceives their environment in a very different way. That is why one-on-one mentorship is very, very crucial. Teachers need to be deeply attuned to each child's needs and their temperaments. I have myself experienced the transformative power of self-directed learning with my own son. Although he attends a conventional school, but we switched entirely to self-direction during COVID years. I was there with him, closely observing and having deep, meaningful conversations. I helped him navigate his own path by being a facilitator, but allowed him to take charge of his own learning journey. Through this approach, he had the freedom to choose what he wanted to learn, build competence by developing new skills and taking his own time to master them, and a strong sense of relatedness as we worked and explored together. This process significantly enhanced his intrinsic motivation to learn. And when all these three needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness were met, I saw him thrive in the ways I had never seen before. So how do you put this concept into practice, you may ask? If you want to take it slow, I encourage you to start with a pilot project in your school. A small population where you design learning spaces and systems that truly support autonomy, where you create diverse learning spaces that can accommodate multiple modalities of learning. These spaces and systems should invite exploration and allow children to manage their own space and time, with teachers serving as facilitators and guides. Well, these are not my personal views, but these are research-proven strategies. When implemented effectively, you will see that children are not only intrinsically motivated and future-ready, but also end up building a strong and robust, thriving health umbrella. As Stephen Covey once said, begin with the end in mind. And the end we must always keep in mind is the thriving health of our children, which is their physical, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. Remember, we cannot build their umbrella, but we can definitely create the right environmental conditions in which they build their umbrella for themselves. And we can do this through thoughtful design, strong relationships, and genuine support. Imagine a school where every decision, every space, Every relationship is built around helping children thrive. A place where well being is not just an afterthought or a buzzword, but a visible reality. So let's begin with the end in mind and ensure that every school is designed with thriving health as a foundation. And if we do this right, we'll often hear our children say, all is well. Thank you.